Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mikhaila Viskupichova, and I would like to welcome you at Private Equity for Women International Women's Day meeting. With this meeting, we would like to celebrate not just the International Women's Day, but also our second anniversary of Private Equity for Women. Firstly, I would like to ask you to mute yourselves. You will be able to continue with this meeting. Since we decided to organize it as a meeting, we would like to allow you to ask a question. So you can use either chat function or you can ask a question directly. If you are not speaking, please mute yourself. If you are using another account, for example, the company account, please rename your account with your personal name. If you would like to ask a question via microphone, either you can raise the hand with in front of your camera, or to use emotion, raising a hand, which you can find in the bar. So one more time, this meeting is allowed you to ask questions, so you can use a chat function, or you can open your camera and also your microphone to ask questions directly. Since we would like to have this meeting more friendly and really open and not like a webinar, which from this time, you can turn on your camera and to be a part of this discussion. I'm very happy that we were able to organize it thanks to Manon Aubry and Nicola Gauzes, who are our co-chairs of Private Equity for Women Club. Private Equity for Women Club is one of the clubs in LPEA, Luxembourg Private Equity and Venture Capital Association, where I also work, not just the events manager, but also as a manager of this club. So this is from our introduction. Now we will start with introducing our speakers. Firstly, I would like to ask Daniela to introduce herself.
Thank you very much, Mikhail, and good morning to everybody. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to give a little bit of background about myself. So my name is Daniela. I am half Swedish, half Italian. I'm born in South Italy, and I moved to Sweden when I was 18 years old. I started my career in '91 in Sweden, and then I moved to Paris and came to Luxembourg in '97. Just by way of introduction, I'd like to say that I started my career in one of the most male environments you could have in the automotive business, working for an Italian company, by the way, Fiat. That's where I started my career, and then moved into the financial services. What's more, I like to add I have two daughters. One who's nearly 21 and one who's nearly 14. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to ask Anya to introduce herself.
Yeah, hi. Good morning, everybody. I'm Anya Gröner. I actually started to work in Luxembourg in '93, and I must say, compared to Daniela, I've been sort of more unilateral because I've been working in funds basically from the first day onwards until today. I only changed at some stage from UCITS funds to alternative funds. And yeah, for the moment I'm working at TMF. So I've been working in different administration companies over the last years. But I've also worked 8 years for EY in private equity and then later alternative assets. And I actually started my career more on the asset management side, which at the time was a company that still existed today. It forms part of JP Morgan, and that was Fleming. So yes, more than 30 years sort of by now, always in investment funds.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Vanessa. Hi, Vanessa.
Hi, Michaela, and hello, everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here today. I'm actually delighted, and I look forward to an interesting discussion. A little bit of background about myself. So I'm a lawyer by profession. I hail from a tiny island in the Mediterranean, which is Malta. My career started in the Maltese Diplomatic Corps, so I was responsible for trade law within the World Trade Organization and EU commercial policy. Moving on to 2006, where I discovered M&A, and I started working at Partners Group within the transactions and legal services team at the time. And fast forward to today, I actually had the Partners Group office in Luxembourg. I have one son, Nicholas. He's 6 years old. And together with my career, I think he's one of my proudest achievements.
Great, thank you. And the last but not least is Florence. Hi, Florence.
Yes, hi, Michaela. Hi, everyone. So my name is Florence Foster. I'm a German, French nationality. I work in the Luxembourg corporate team of Linklaters. Since 2011, I started my career as a lawyer in Paris, a little bit for 1 year before joining the corporate Luxembourg team at Linklaters. I have been working on corporate matters, a lot PE clients, and also been focusing on the German market since 2016. I'm working mainly from the Frankfurt office, so I often come to Luxembourg, but most of the time sit in Frankfurt. So here I am in Frankfurt. I have 2 kids. One is 7 and one is 1 year old. And I very much look forward talking with all of you about women careers and the things I realized which help me now to better focus on my career, what I haven't been doing for the last 10 years, I would say. So I'm happy to join the conversation.
Thank you. Yes, let's talk about women's careers, our subtitle of this event. And Nicholas, our co-chair, you can start with the first question.
Thank you. So I have the pleasure of being with you, representing men today. There's not so many of them, which is a shame. I think it takes 2 to tango. So if we want to change things, we'll have to have both men and women on board. This is a conversation, so we will disagree, I hope, on certain things. Otherwise, there's no fun. If too many people tend to agree, then I'll try to come back with something more provocative and something different. It's not about arguing about and proving the other one is wrong or that we're right. It's about understanding the other one. Because probably one of the key issue that we still face in our, I must say, lucky environment here in Luxembourg and an industry that is also quite lucky in terms of diversity, the issue is still about communication. So that's why today is a meeting. We want to have this open communication with everyone. And I'll start with asking a question to Anya, because you may have seen in the articles that have been published in the magazine, the RPA magazine, that all of our speakers today have also drafted an article explaining how they came to succeed. And Anya, I think, is showing the hard way, which is work harder than men. And I'd like to know, Anya, whether you believe that there is another hope than just fighting harder to get better.
Yeah, obviously, it's not the only thing that would sort of make success, obviously. I think my experience is, in particular, as a woman in this industry, for example, in the sales department, because I've been working in sales quite a lot of years, is that the people that I actually talk to, let's say on the private clients, private equity clients, asset managers, the majority of them, they are actually men. It doesn't happen very often that I'd actually be sort of that we'd be talking to a woman. And in order to be taken seriously, as a woman in particular, if you're a younger one, I mean, now with more than 50, it's maybe a different story, but in the beginning, when you're 25 or 30-year-old, in order to be taken seriously, and I'm not 1.90 m and weighing 100 kilos, you've got to be something sort of to impress people. And my strategy has always been sort of to be technically really up to speed and to be better than other people. And you know, in the teams where I was in, usually sort of from a sales point of view, mixed teams, so men and women, I usually was the one who had the better sort of technical skills in order to be able to say that, okay, I can answer like 95% of all questions, and you tend to get a lot of sort of very diversified questions when you are selling investment fund administration services and depository services, AFM services. And obviously, sort of having that technical knowledge doesn't sort of, you know, doesn't fall from heaven. It is not only, but also based on investing time to be able to show that you actually have the technical knowledge. And for me, that is something that has always worked. So yes, maybe more working, but also sort of just being better, also from a technical point of view, than probably some of the men would, in order to be taken seriously.
I think that's an interesting thing, because that is what I can acknowledge at home. I'm a partner in a law firm. My wife is a partner at a law firm. We have exactly the same career, and nevertheless, I think she's raising the bar higher than me to succeed in many respects. So you're putting yourself, if I may, as an outsider, you're putting yourself a huge amount of pressure to get where you want to be. Daniela, you were also in a male-ish environment. Is it the same experience?
Yes, so as I explained, I started in a very male environment and then continue in a quite male environment, because obviously I also work in financial services since many years in Luxembourg, and still in Tirana in the alternative world as well. So definitely, yes, I tend to agree that women, you know, it's always a strength to show your technical knowledge, and I tend to agree that yes, that's sort of the first step. You need to show that obviously you are good. That's very important. But what I would like to say, for me, it was always a matter of attitude. And being very young when I started with Fiat, and I remember in particular when I arrived in France, where I was the only woman in my department, and I was only 24 years old and coming from Sweden, I think I had very early to set some boundaries, you know, very early on. It's a matter of attitude. And it's more a matter of attitude than sort of something that you express in words, setting those boundaries. And for me, showing that you are unimpressed by any dominant behavior. That's something I wrote in my article. For me, it was important, because whether it's a man or a woman, you know, that's where you need really, it requires a little bit of self-confidence, but I had to force myself. I had to force to you know, to show to people, look, you know, here I am, and here is what I want. And that's something that I think is extremely important. I think, as Anya says, women tend to work very hard. And women tend to want to be perfect. And as you say, Nicolas raised the bar high, which is very good. But women, unfortunately, tend to be a little more shy to ask. Most often, women don't ask for a promotion, don't ask for reward. And that's what, you know, I think, you know, perhaps you have to force yourself. For me, it wasn't coming, you know, naturally. But I also said to myself, you know, I worked that hard. And, you know, sometimes you just wait for a promotion, you wait for somebody who's coming to tell you, you know, you're very good and, you know, that's what you deserve. It comes, you know, I'm not saying that it doesn't come. And, you know, I've certainly met a lot of very good people who have motivated me during the years. But I think you need also to take the step and ask if you want something. If you're ambitious, and, you know, it's not a matter now of being men or women, you know, if you naturally have ambition and want to achieve something, then my advice would be, don't be shy. Normally people would support you if they see that you want to achieve something. I think that people will support you. That would be my advice.
I have a team that is mainly composed of women, for that reason that indeed they tend to work harder. And the problem is they don't get promotion if they don't ask. And I've been very clear, and Florence can acknowledge that, she's in my team. I've been very clear in saying, if you don't ask, you won't get. So, and sorry if this is a very masculine way of saying things. I'm a man, and I'm still making the decision of who is being promoted. And I set a rule: you need to ask. And I know Vanessa was very in disagreement with that, saying you're still imposing your way, while you know that it is different. And yes, because as you just said, Daniela, that was my grandma who said, you never get more than you ask for. So if you want something, ask for it. Vanessa, that was somehow disappointing when I said that to you. So could you react to that?
Sure, absolutely. I think the debate is always very nuanced, right? But I find that we as women also tend to put additional burdens on ourselves. So ask, change, work differently, become like a man. And I think it's just a single-minded viewpoint, right? So when Nicola told me, well, I expect a woman to ask me. If they don't ask, clearly they are either not ambitious or don't want it. And in a spur of a second, I was thinking, but hey, Nicola, since you know that women have a tendency not to ask, why don't you do more than just simply say, if they don't ask, I will not promote them? Why don't you help? Why don't you mentor? Why don't you try and understand? You rightly started by saying that it takes two to tango, right? And I think we're biologically and scientifically wired differently. It's all about communication. And I'd like this discourse not to be about one-sided. What can women do more? What can women do differently to fit in the male construct? I think it should also be around us women recognizing how the rules of the game currently are, but also men understanding, right, that the rules of the game might need to change sometimes to make sure that you have the right talent at the table eventually.
Florence, you attended a training for the last 9 months, I think, which is the Women Leadership Program that exists at Linklaters. Was it all about fixing women, or was it different in the approach?
It was different, and I must say, even if you cannot have cliches, I think I'm one of the cliches, working very hard and not asking for anything, and just hoping that since I work hard and I do a good job, that it will come from its own. And when I came back from maternity leave, I thought, I cannot just continue doing what I'm doing and not see, I need to go to the next step. And I didn't know how to approach this. So when I saw this advertising where they were looking for women to attend this program, and you have this application procedure to do it, I thought, I really want to do it. I think this is the thing which I need to see what I want in my life, in my career, and how what are the tools to succeed with it. And during this course, it is not about fixing women being better, being men, being, the same, having the success men have. It's more about being different and looking for your unique selling point, seeing what is special about you, how you can make a difference, what you want to do. And it's not about working harder. Nobody said anything about working harder in there. I don't want to work harder. I want to work as hard as the others. And you should not be better than men. You should be the same. You could be better. Obviously, it helps to be better than others. As for men, if a man is better than another man, it helps him. But you shouldn't be, as a woman, better than them to get to your career aspirations. This shouldn't be nowadays. And it's true in law firms, we have a lot of female associates, and most, I would say the majority is female lawyers who join. But even there, I started 12 years ago in France, and even then there were all these women. And when you look at now where I am 10 years after at Linklaters, there's still more than 80% men who are partners. So there really has, from my perspective, something to change. And it's not about fixing women, it's about seeing what you can sell and what you can bring, and you need to be different than men, and you need to have this this diversity to make the business work, from my perspective.
Florence, perhaps I have a question. You said that you should be different and you should be fearless, what I understand. But have you been always like this? Have you been always confident when you started your career? How did you manage to find the confidence you have today to be a partner?
I didn't have any confidence from the start. I have been raised in Germany, so as some of the people said, and following discussions we had earlier also with the speakers, Germany is very conservative. So women are all very well qualified, have great marks, are very hardworking, are very good, but they do not succeed and they're often shy, and they have all these pressure on them because they have to be a good mother. And most of my colleagues here in Frankfurt office, and this is really a big difference to the Luxembourg office, I must say, and it's good to see, they say, how do you manage? How can you have 2 children which are still of young age? How do you manage this pressure and this work and how are these things? And this kind of, this tutoring of younger people, this gave me the confidence, the first confidence I had. And then the program gave me the confidence because I vocalize now what I want, and I didn't do that before. So really, I think having these programs in companies or law firm is very helpful. Especially for me, it was helpful, but I think it would be very helpful for other young women. And it's a pity I just discovered it now, because it would have been much more useful to start 5 years ago.
So I guess
I still think that I'm going back to what Vanessa and Nicolas was saying about sort of being able or wanting to voice what one wants. I think this is actually one of the major issues still today. Florence sort of got it through the program she was attending, but a lot of times I think women are actually sort of standing in their own way, in their in a sense that they do not voice clearly sort of what they want, where they want to go. And for men, it's clear that they are out there sort of to make a career, also probably because of the old traditional sort of view of men having sort of to feed basically a family. So it's clear that once they get out of university, they want a career. So, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of sort of women also want a career, but then it also means that you have to dare things. You have to show as well that you don't only know things, but that you can also sort of voice it in a way that's like, I can do this. I think if there's, let's say, a position out there and a woman is going to look at the description and say, not 100% sure if I actually have the qualifications, maybe rather not. A man would probably just go for it and, thinking, okay, I'll still have another 1 or 2 months in order to get that knowledge up to where I need it. And so I think the confidence and the self-confidence that men very often have is bigger, and women just ask themselves too many questions instead of saying, okay, I can do it. Challenges are also good for me. I can grow with the challenge. And I think this is something that maybe that's also like hundreds of years of education of women that's sort of still impacting, reflecting on our behavior today, and instead of saying, okay, also sort of, you know, if it needs be, I mean, if it's the two of you, you and another guy sort of wanting a position, well, use your elbows in the sense that, okay, I really want it, no? Not sort of stepping behind saying, no, maybe I'm not able to do it. So I think this is something where even still today, a lot of women are actually sort of underestimating themselves and could probably sort of get far more ahead if they just had the courage and the self-confidence to do things. Mm-hmm.
Can I chip in perhaps a couple of words? Yes. So it's interesting what you say, Anya. I think you need the self-confidence and you learn it as well. But yeah, I've observed obviously my career men a lot because, as Anya was saying, you know, I've been working with men basically all the time, and that's why I learned the 80-20 rule. So women, as you say, they perhaps try to go really for perfection, sort of the 100%. Men, they will feel comfortable even if you know you have the 80% sort of confidence that you can do something. Now it's very much a stereotype, so I will stop there. What I will say is that it is true. Women perhaps tend to do, to have a little bit less confidence. But I say we should be learning, you know, from both behaviors. Women can observe men and perhaps try sort of to behave a little bit differently. But I think, as I don't know who made the comment, was that Vanessa perhaps or Florence, you know, men also need to adapt their style of management a little bit more. And that can only come when you have a real diversity. That's where we should be coming to, I think, in our discussion, if I may, because diversity is really the key. And diversity is not only, having more women or having more men. It's really coming to that, how can I say, that balance, you know. That's why we want diversity at board level. That's why we want more diversity at management level. That's really for me the key. And to be a little bit positive, perhaps, I think that this is coming. You know, we have a little bit more examples of men who are really, how can I say, really wanting to perhaps take care of the family more than I've been doing in the past. We see more and more men that try, at least as much as possible, to take advantage of the parental leave. We have examples. I think, Nicola, you certainly have a few words on that. And I think we should encourage that. We should really encourage that, and encourage that by education. I mentioned to the others quickly, I was asking my daughter, who's nearly 14 years old, what she felt about the condition of women. And, you know, she felt any difference. And she was going, oh, what do you mean? You know, and it was interesting to see that they, at least at that age, I think she will feel it a bit later, she didn't feel that it was an issue. Stop there.
And perhaps Nicola and Manon, if I could add, so I wholeheartedly agree that the balanced end goal, right, that we want to achieve, and I think it's about diversity. It's just not a gender debate, which I think it should be much more than that. I'm going to throw out something provocative out there. Everybody says, men have the self-confidence, men are so confident. I don't think so. I actually think they doubt themselves as much as women do. And I have had male colleagues, right, who basically express their doubt, and which I, by the way, think expressing your doubts and expressing what you fear, what you think might make you succeed or not, that's very courageous. It takes courage to express self-doubt. Of course, it doesn't take courage to build a facade. So what I actually think is very important is what Florence mentioned. I think perhaps it is not a question as to whether women and men are more confident than each other or they're different, but it's a question of vocalization, right? Of bringing out what you really want. And to that, I would add, sometimes women also think, right, isn't it obvious if I'm working, say, in a law firm, or if I'm working in a PE firm and I'm working long hours every day, you don't need to vocalize it only with words. Vocalization happens, right, through many shapes and forms. and working hard and achieving and hitting your targets, that to me is a clear statement that you are ambitious and want to make a career. So perhaps it's us trying to understand each other more. And again, it boils down to communication.
So what would, yeah, perhaps just to jump on the statement from Vanessa, what would be your tips to the young generation to vocalize, as you say, their feelings and their needs, and what would be the tips you would give to the management, perhaps to listen more? Because I guess you felt one day that you need to say something, but perhaps you met someone, a mentor, to help you to express yourself.
Yep. I think, well, I've been lucky perhaps in my career. My first two bosses in the Partners Group were men. And the first thing I was told when I joined Partners Group was contribute and your career will happen, right? It's about the mindset of contributing, working as if this is your own firm. My suggestions would be have mentors, have as many colleagues where you can brainstorm together. Don't be afraid to actually question things, ask how you can do better, how you can do it differently. You will get diverse views, and then you will find the best way which suits you. I think it's wrong to actually say to someone, be it a man or a woman, right? You basically have to change 360 degrees to make this happen. I think there are tweaks which one can do. One can change. I don't subscribe to the full change of your career, of who you are, in order to better your career. I think there are improvements, and you get those insights from a broad network of colleagues you could have, your peers, your seniors. As to your question around management, again, and this is what Nicola mentioned when he said, I was a little bit disappointed when he told me, I tell my the woman in my team, if you don't ask, you don't get. And I said, but isn't it your job as a manager to recognize the talent in the team? That is your job, to find the right talent, and it is your job to mentor those whom you believe can and should make it to partner, to help them along the way. It's far too easy to say, if you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah, I know it is easy, but I always tend to make my life easier as much as I can, like many men will do. We're not raising the bar higher, we're just trying to jump above the bar. That's it. So that's where we look at success. So I do agree actually that we should look for talent and not wait for talent, and it should look for that being without looking at gender as a criteria. But still, you can help people noticing what you're doing by showing it, but also by telling it. It's not a question of whether you're working hard or not and why you're working hard or not. It's a question of perception. The perception can be very different depending on where you're looking from. And the question is, are you sure that the other persons do have the right perception of what you're doing? And checking that perception is absolutely key. It's not about changing the reality, and I fully subscribe to what you say, Vanessa. We shouldn't be different. If we're trying to be all the same, then diversity is a lost cause and is absolutely useless. If we're taking very different people, trying to make them all look the same, then it's a waste of time. We want to have different people because they bring different values and they bring different benefits. But the thing is that contribution valued in the way it should? And that is a question of perception. That's why I'm saying, don't change the reality, change the perception of what you're doing. And for that, communication is absolutely key. You need to check whether you're projecting the right, you're sending the right signal, and whether the signal that you believe you're sending is being perceived in the way you want it to be perceived. So is it acceptable to be political to succeed? Is it honest to be political and do some personal branding, to use a less negative word maybe? What do you think about personal branding? Daniela, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute myself. It's an interesting point you're making. I don't know how to express the self. I don't know if political is the right word, but I think that there is a little bit of an element which men doesn't really change, that should be capable of projecting that ambition in the right way. And that's about branding, perhaps. That's what you define about branding. Networking in our business is so important. Anya, she knows that we find ourselves very often in conferences where, well, certainly there are not many women, and yeah, that's something which is very, very important, sort of to force yourself as a woman to go into that networking. Now again, I think you need to be yourself. That's something I've always said to myself. It's not because you are in a male environment, which happens every day in my work, that you should not be yourself. I think you need really to project that in your mind. I've always said to myself, there's nothing about man or woman. I know I can achieve something, and I'm going to achieve it. That's all. But I think it's important to have that self-confidence that enables you to go into that branding, perhaps, as you call it, or I wouldn't call it political or branding, but it's more sort of having that self-confidence that enables you to express what you want, but in the right manner, in the manner which is right for you. And it's difficult to say what it is because we all have our story. I'm sure I'm not very clear, but yeah, I'll stop there.
I think there's something in there which you just mentioned, which I think is very important. And that's the fact that a lot of men and women just have different ways of working. For example, one of the issues is because have been always sort of working in sales, not only, but also networking is super important. And I agree, a lot of women by default, because they have kids at home, sort of in the evening sort of tend to go home after work, whether men are going to go out, have a beer. And that network is extremely important. And I think it's something that women have also sort of realized, that also if they do networking, it'll be good for them as well. So in that respect, it's good if sort of women sort of also sort of see how men actually work, but also that men see how women work. I think that interchange is extremely important for both sides, because at the end, it's only with mixed teams that you really have at the end a good result. I mean, it's not sort of women against men, but it's sort of if both of them work together, the result tends to be better if it's only women or only men, because we are so diverse. So it's important sort of to see sort of that women know sort of what do men do different from the way we do it, and vice versa. It needs to go into the other direction as well. So there are certain strong points that women just have. And I think men just have to look out for those ones as well. And what I, for example, find absolutely fantastic, in that respect, probably the financial industry is one of the leaders, is that also, and I've seen that also over the last year, more and more men actually take the liberty to say, okay, now we have a newborn child. I am going to take half a year off. And okay, if it throws me back for a year in Korea, so be it, but it'll be the same sort of for the wife. So I think the fact that men do this more and more is extremely important. And it shows that you can actually achieve that equality. And I think that's a great thing to do, sort of both. And it cannot only be the woman who's going to take care of the children, but it's it's a mutual relationship, and I think that's extremely important, but it's probably in our industry also sort of easier to achieve. And I think in particular, sort of when I saw this there is more equality, I think, for example, in a law firm very often than in other companies, also here in Luxembourg. So there are differences still today, and I think sort of Nicolas is a great example, where he's also taking care of the children. But I still remember when one of my colleagues, who was a senior manager auditor when I was at EY, and he wanted to take half a year off, it was like, are you gonna fuck up your career now, sort of finally and for good? I mean, you know, are you totally out of your mind? I mean, this is basically what it was said, you know, not just thought, but said. And it shows there is still a long way to go. I mean, that was maybe about 10 years ago, but things sort of don't change from one day to another either.
I had the same feedback when I asked, when my first boy was born, I asked to work part-time for 1 year. So I was working mornings only. It was in 2007. At that time, I was probably the first man in the industry in Luxembourg doing that. And actually, I also had that remark that I probably didn't want a career if I was doing that, and if I wanted to have a career, I was just completely unrealistic, still pretending that I could have one. Apparently it worked well, and nevertheless, I achieved what I wanted to achieve. And I think it's all about the definition of success. When we're discussing about a career, we're using the definition of success used by men. If the success is having a great career. The definition of success for a woman is slightly different. You want to have it all. You want to have a career. You want to have a family. You want to have a social life. You want to have friends. And your definition of success is much better than ours. The thing is, we're living by the men definition of success. And what I tried to convince people, it was 15 years ago, that actually going part-time for a man was extremely ambitious, and that this was the same ambition as a woman, which is to have it all. I wanted to have time, I wanted to have children, I wanted to have family, and I wanted to have a career. And I'm still working according to that standard, which is, what is my definition of success? And that's why I'm working part-time still today, after a pause where I had to work full-time. But no, I'm working part-time again. I'm taking all my Wednesdays off to be with my children who plays rugby, and also to have time for myself. So I think what women tend to miss is that they're not using the same definition of success. From my perspective, they're using the right one, but they're being confronted with a male-ish environment, which is only using one criteria rather than a multi-criteria approach.
So I would say, Nicolas, that it takes a lot of courage to do that as a man, and I would really, encourage men to do that, because that's where you actually have the change of attitude. That's extremely important. To the contrary to you, I've had 2 children. I've never taken a parental leave. And for me, it was even sort of the contrary. I was asked, so why don't you take a parental leave? Don't you want to stay home? And I had to say, no, look, I made my arrangements. I'm coming to work because I want to have a career. So it was completely the contrary. I have to say why I did want, I wanted to go to work, was today men, they have to fight basically to explain that, yeah, as you said, they want it all, like women. So if we can come perhaps to a convergence there, that's where we want to go. I think that's extremely important. It's changing the attitude. That's what we need to do. That should be really the next step for me.
And again, I think this is a testament to the fact that all hangs in the balance, right? In the sense that a balanced view is probably the most reasonable and right view. There shouldn't be one definition of success, or a male definition of success, or female definition of success. For all I know, a woman can decide not to have children, and that is fine. And she defines her success as she wants it to be, as much as a male might decide that his success is defined by the multifaceted dimensions of life, children, sports, job, right? Nicola, if I may, just quickly on your point, I think perception is actually really key. Perhaps Daniela knows this book, but it was a great book, and I still am very fond and have a soft spot for it. It's by an Italian author, it's by Pirandello, and it's called Il fu Mattia Pascal. And I loved the book because it is about absolute truth and perception, right? And unfortunately in life, there is no absolute truth, right? The truth is always relative, depending on from where it is seen. And I don't want this to be a philosophical conversation, but perhaps women tend to be more about absolute truth. I work hard, therefore I deserve it, right? But there's also an element of perception, and you have to make sure that your perception or your viewpoint matches with other viewpoints, where you bring the expectations together. And I don't like the term being political, and I would suspect that many women find that not resonating with them. It has a negative connotation, right? But actually being able to showcase who you are. I think in an age of social media, probably the next generation is more business savvy in this respect, right? Actually marketing who you are and what you do without inflating it, right? Being yourself and just giving due what is due. But I think perception is probably where perhaps we can get stuck as women, right? Because for us, it's an equal formula. You do, therefore you get, but there is an element of perception which makes it much more nuanced and therefore much more difficult, perhaps.
So maybe just to jump on this, and perhaps the audience and the participants may have a question regarding this, but personally, when I entered the professional life, I've realized that when I've attended the networking events, there were only few women, and I realized perhaps that they did not receive the invitation. So it might be linked with the communication channels. From my personal point of view, women do not attend the networking events because they are not invited to. Do you have any tips for the audience to explore how to create their own networking place in Luxembourg?
Mm-hmm. Well, for example, it's not that active anymore, but with 2 or 3 other girls, I actually put together a couple of years a little network which we used really informally, like every other month, where we just got together sort of for basically for having a glass of wine and for networking, sort of, you know, nothing sort of complicated, chichi. But it was always sort of well received. We did it sort of in rota at different, basically employers' sort of offices. And it's something that worked well. And the reason why we had it, because we said, you know, we need to have something sort of where women can also go. And if let's sort of start at 5 or 6 o'clock, so women also sort of have the chance to go. And I mean, very often there were 30, 40 women that came sort of regularly. And so I think these things are important, but normally they just need to be organized differently. It's the majority of the women just cannot say, okay, no, let's go for a beer. Not if you have children, it just needs to be organized differently. And I think that's something that is, I think nowadays, I mean, I find this quite normal that even today, if you want to do this, then it needs to be sort of pre-organized. But if you're happy to do this, then also for women, networking is possible, and I think it's also necessary. But I think what I do see, I mean, and I mean, also Daniela and I have been working sort of for so many years that there's a new generation as well nowadays, where also I think men and women are far more relaxed with each other. It's not sort of one against the other, but it's sort of, okay, let's share the things and let's work together. And let's make sure that if we work together, sort of the outcome is really positive. And I think that has actually changed. But maybe it's also because the new generation, when I was sort of, when I started my career, was sitting now, I want a career and I want to make it sort of, and I don't want sort of to stop somewhere. I think it was different at the time. Today, there is more equality sort of from the beginning onwards. There is far less of a fight. And it also means that in that case, you can sort of share things more than you did, let's say, 20 years ago. So I think it's been going quite far. I think 20 years ago, or sort of even more, I mean, you would actually sort of, you know, really have to voice if you wanted something. No. So nobody was going to say, you know, I think you have the potential and I'm going sort of to push you. But you first of all had to, you know, make sure that people knew that you actually wanted to get somewhere. And then as a second step, people were sort of mentoring you and sort of pushing you, etc., etc. So there's been a lot of change over the last years, and I hope it's going to make it a little bit easier also for the coming generations.
It would be interesting to hear from some younger women.
Yeah, do we have people in the meeting who are interested to raise question or to react? We're absolutely keen to get your views as well. If there's something you fully disagree with, then please let us know, either by chat or by raising a hand, and we'll and open your mic.
Yeah, feel free to turn your camera on as well. Don't be shy.
It's much more easier when we are in person, as like here we via internet, but this is like the meeting give us more opportunities to share camera and to share our opinion. Yeah.
Maybe in the meantime, just to share another insight I had from the program, and which I applied and I thought is very effective. And I would have liked knowing it before to start with it when I was a younger lawyer, is to seek feedback, because I was always afraid to ask or vocalize things or ask for feedback. But actually, this is very, very valuable to ask for feedback, because you can then see what you're good at and then making it even better, and you're kind of branding what you're good at. And it also shows your successes and the things where you could be do differently or better at. You also hear them, because there's always some person saying some little thing, and then you can work on that. And I thought this is really very helpful to bring out your own brand and to kind of foster yourself, right? To go further. So that was just one more thing I wanted to share.
On feedback, one thing I'd like to mention: listen to the positive feedback. We tend to only listen to the constructive feedback, as English people will say, and French people will say negative feedback or criticism. So we tend to over-focus on what is negative, and those are our weaknesses. The problem is it takes much more effort to fix your weaknesses with far less result than focusing on your strengths and developing them, because focusing on strengths is easier, funnier, and more efficient. So when you get feedback, try to not ask for what is going wrong and what you could do better, but also listen to what you're doing well, because those is an indication of what you should develop further and what will make a real difference in your career. I'm fighting again in my team because I tend to have more women than men asking me, what should I do differently? And I'm not interested about what they should do differently. I'm interested in what they should do more, because this is what they do well. And again, it's about, it's a form of self-promotion as well, but you need to work on your strengths, because that is much, much easier and much more successful. And for those who have responsibilities in their organization, I would recommend not only to organize a session about how to give feedback, because that is generally the way it is organized, at least for the leaders in the organization. You get training on how do you deliver feedback. I attended a few of them, and actually the most interesting I attended was about how do you receive feedback. It is much more interesting to know what to do with the feedback than how do you give feedback, because that's where you progress. And coaching is doing a lot, and I think what has changed probably in the last decades is the importance of coaching and using strengths, working on strengths to develop. And I think that is something super important. You see the reaction very quick, the changes very quickly when people start promoting their strengths.
But it's also necessary to know who is your manager, no? Like to change, because as I heard from Vanessa, you don't have to ask what your manager could see if you are potential and if you can increase your salary or go higher. But if Nicholas is my manager, I have to ask if I can have a higher position. So I think there is like for young generation a little bit difficult to know who is your manager, which personality, if he is waiting for your effort, or it's expect your effort, or your effort shows like, oh, she wants to have much more and she's not ready yet. So like to really like what is the recipe to know how to speak with your boss? It's necessary to diagnose like who is your boss or leader.
You have to factor your environment in everything you do. You have to take into account your environment. So it's not about being yourself in isolation. You're being yourself in a certain environment. So you have to also know the rules of that environment. I'm seeing that we have Samantha raising a hand.
Yes.
Samantha?
Yes. Hello. I just wanted to share a comment on the importance of having a mentor and someone sharing how things are working in the real professional life environment, because you know when you're just a new professional, and this is how I was reacting. I thought that everybody was working so hard and that we were all reacting the same way, so not looking for a promotion, well, looking for it but not saying it. Having my self-assessment, which was probably 20% less positive than my male colleagues, and I had a discussion once with one of our partners, and he told me, but you need to open your eyes. I mean, you are so severe with yourself. But for me, it was just, I mean, it was normal. I was expecting that everybody was doing the same, male or female. It was really not different. And I think it's really crucial that we share with the young professionals how it works in practice and our experience, and yeah, make us realize that we do not think the same way actually. And that yeah, probably men who are not 100% sure that they can make it will ask for a promotion, whereas from a woman perspective, we need to plan ahead and make sure that, okay, so will I be able to do that? And in 1 year, will I still be on the tracks that I had and the plan that I have? So I think it's really crucial that we share that with the youngest ones. So yeah, so that they realize this, and honestly, I'm still the person I used to be, but I just take that into account when I ask for something or when I want something, and yeah, I just force myself a little bit more to express myself, actually.
Thank you, Samantha. I fully agree with that. I think mentoring is super helpful, but it is also helpful for the mentor. It's a way of communicating to the oldest generation certain things you see differently. So it's not only about promoting the mentee and helping the mentee, it does help the mentors.
And actually, I fully agree with you, because we had a discussion about the way I was reacting to some feedbacks, and the person told me, yeah, but you take everything very personally. And at some point, I've told him, you know, that's the way I am. So, I mean, if you feel uncomfortable about it, you shouldn't. It doesn't kill me. It's just the way I react, and that's it. And sometimes I may cry. That happens, but it's just the way I react, and you should be fine about it. So yeah, it's not just one way. It's also a discussion. I fully agree with you, Nicola.
Well, I think it's quite important. There's one point there that you're saying, taking things personal or not personal. I think one also has to learn over time sort of not to take things personally and to build a little bit of Teflon around one. Because if you always sort of take everybody's sort of criticism or sort of comments sort of personally, you'll really sort of start to have doubts about yourself, what you can do. And I think this is sort of where a lot of women still need to get a little bit sort of more, how to say, just need to be more resistant and, you know, not take things personally, and sort of worst case scenario, sort of say, okay, no, it maybe didn't work out, but it's just not just me who I'm, you know, not being capable or whatever, but it's also a matter of circumstances, others, myself, all together. And I can stand up even if it didn't work out, and then I can do it again next time. So I can also learn from something. But I think it's I think it's a typical women's trait to take things personal, and if things don't work out, sort of first of all to ask yourself, why did I do something wrong? And maybe it was a little bit shoe size too big. And I think that's something that I think also, no, if you do this, you'll never sort of find your way.
That's fun, because that's what I heard from a partner. He told me women always want to be, he told me, to be exact, he told me women have the syndrome of the première de classe. For the one who speak French, they do understand. It just means that women always want to be perfect and to be the first one in everything, which is not possible. Perhaps the last reaction from Vanessa.
Yep, just to add, I disagree and agree with Anya at the same time, and I think this is the beauty of it, right? Amongst women ourselves, we actually also tend to not to have the same viewpoint. I think it is okay to take it personally. I think if you're actually putting so much effort in something, I can't actually honestly understand how someone doesn't take it personally. I think what is key, however, is that you don't let that turn into, as what Anya said, self-doubt, right? I think taking it personally, to the extent you use it as a tool to effectively, objectively, and rationally, right, analyze what the feedback was and how you can better that particular area, right, or how you would do it differently next time, then I think it's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with taking it personally. And I've had women throughout my career, my colleagues of mine, right, who actually express this all the time. And once I remember very fondly a colleague of mine being in our New York office, and New York can be a tough environment, right? And at one point she cried, right? And I said, it's okay to cry. Men and women react differently, right? Now, do I say go and cry in front of everybody every single time? Definitely not. But I think it's also fine to acknowledge, right, that a reaction is not necessarily not okay. It is okay. And I think it's worse if we actually tell women, hey, buckle up, get up and move on. I think we need to spend the time amongst ourselves, right, to effectively support each other by actually saying it is okay. And guess what? All of us feel like that any other day. But now the trick is, how do we move on from here, right? What does help? What does that give you in terms of learning and how to move forward?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So unfortunately, we have to close this meeting. We would like to thank you, all of you, to being there, and thank you for the speakers. We could have continued this conversation for hours and hours, and we can already perhaps make a new debate next year to see if something changed, because there were a lot of improvement during the last 10 years, for example. But the idea is just to not sit and still, but to act. And what I understood today is that you should take care of you and express yourself. I don't know if Michaela wants to say another word.
Yes, just I really hope that something changed and it's a COVID situation and we will be able to meet in person. But for now, really thank you for your participation. And also what I can say is just to click on lpea.lu website. In events, you can find different webinars what we organize, and we have there in the clubs also the information about the private equity for women. So if your company is already a member of LPEA, you can as an employee apply for membership in our club, Private Equity for Women Club. So that's from my side everything. Thank you very much, all of our speakers and our coaches, Nicolas and Manon, for great participation and also co-organization.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
and
you.
Enjoy the International Women's Day.
Yes, happy International Women's Day. Enjoy this this day. This day is ours. And thank you and see you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.